Hello, guys, and welcome to another episode of No Strings Attached. And I'm very excited for today's conversations, like I am for all my conversations. But today's conversation, especially because here with me is Carson Bell, a star coach from Edmonton, Alberta. And we tried to set it up for what, like a month, maybe more?
Yeah, yeah, both busy schedules, it's for
Yeah.
sure.
Listen, so that's why I'm very appreciative of you joining. And, great to have you. Like, thanks for having time, for sure.
Yeah, I'm glad we could work it out.
Yes.
Excited.
Yeah. So listen, I want to start like I always give this intro time to all my guests to basically talk about their story, their history, about how did they get into coaching. So maybe you can share with us yours.
Yeah, I mean, my story starts from both my parents coaching. My dad was the first ever manager and head coach of the U of A Tennis Center, which is now the Saville Sports Centre. And I, have stories of plastic tennis racket and a balloon when I could crawl. So just kind of been in it for life. And then kind of in my teenage years, I decided, as much as I love playing and competing, which I still do to this day, it's like I just enjoyed the coaching side and kind of being able to give that joy that I got from tennis to other people. So kind of from like junior high age onward, I had like the coaching pathway in mind. And then over time here, I've been at the Saville Sports Centre now for 21 years.
Wow.
Started there when I was 17, and just over time have just fallen in love with the performance side, which was always kind of the goal. But at this point, do almost exclusively performance coaching.
That's unbelievable. What can you remind us maybe from your childhood? Like, what do you remember from it? Like, what made tennis so fun? Was it fun? I just assumed,
For the most part, yeah, definitely. I mean, my dad in particular, like both of my parents coached, but my dad in particular was, where I'm in the performance side more. He was very much in the kind of the love of the game type of coach, right, and growing the game and really, just loved tennis, and it was infectious. Like you'd walk around our house, and there was like every tennis knick-knack you could think of. Christmas ornaments, bookends, placemats, right?
I know a few houses like that.
Yeah. So I just kind of growing up around it. And I think the thing I love about it is sort of that idea of, I'm coming out to the match playing you, and I've got my things I can do. You've got your things that you can do, and kind of how do you solve that puzzle?
Yeah.
And I think that's why I like performance coaching so much too, is because you get to go out and help the players with that. I love the tournament coaching and that type of stuff, and helping them to learn how to solve the problems too.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, 100%. But you like tournament coaching, but you also are a tournament player. Not a lot of coaches still compete, because I'm checking your Instagram. You're still competing. I remember like back when we were doing our Coach 3, I believe. Was it Coach 3 that we did together? So you were competing like avidly. You were an avid competitor. Like right now, I'm just preparing for the interview. Like you're still competing. You're still into it. So
yeah, I had a bit of a break there. I was playing open tournaments all the time, and had a bit of a break. And then now after COVID, during the lockdowns, I turned 35, so then was eligible to start playing Masters, which I mean is now actually starts at 30, but it didn't start at 30 when I was 30. So but now, so I'm big in the Masters scene these days. So I just finished a tournament last weekend, like you were talking about with the Instagram stuff.
Yeah.
So.
How much does it help you to bring that experience, like of your own, competing, and like bringing it to your students? That's huge, no?
I mean, I think so. Like it's also, I mean, going out and competing, especially now after the break, I find is very humbling too, where it's like, it kind of helps you to feel like what they're going through, right? I mean, it's like, all of a sudden they go out and, are feeling tight or not bringing their best level, or, it's like have a day where it's like, oh yeah, well, look, my forehand just disappeared today.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're kind of going through the process again of trying to reestablish those skills, which I mean, even when I was playing open tournaments, 10 years ago, you had some of that still. You still felt what it was like to be in the battle and be in the fight, but even then it was almost less relatable because I felt like, I had a pretty good grasp on everything I was doing. I was training more, younger, and now it's like kind of trying to relearn stuff. It's like, oh yeah, this is what all the athletes are going through. Yeah, okay, you don't quite have that skill locked in, and maybe at break point it's not where you want it to be, right? And it's like, kind of having that feeling, I think it makes it easier to relate.
Like it's fascinating because I don't play as much points like as I used to when I was at Tennis Canada and traveling all the juniors. I do play from time to time, and what absolutely stuns me that every time I comes back, and I would always think like, oh, it's like your technique that goes away when you're not playing, or like your physical. Sure, that's true to some extent, but to me personally, like I see the most is like that competitive edge that goes away. If you're not playing your points, if you're not constantly competing, you lose it big time. Like I really feel like I completely forget how to like manage certain situations if I don't play. I know how to talk about that, but to bring that experience and to apply it to my game. So I think like for you to constantly going in there and experiencing and putting yourself out there and like saying, because you can say that, like, listen, like last weekend, I know what you're going through. I had the same thing last weekend. I had like my serve wasn't working, and like guess what I did? Like it helped me. Try it. Maybe it will help you. So it just creates that, I think, more humbling experience like for your students. It's not like you're this guy like talking. It's like, hey, like I go through exactly what you're going through.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I think it definitely, like being able to talk about it from that experience definitely holds some weight with the athletes too, right? So, makes it feel a little more tangible for them and more real.
No, 100%. I want to talk a little bit more about your coaching, obviously, but more like what separates Carson from other coaches? What is your style? Like, what do you believe in as a coach?
So I mean, I think I've had a lot of different style of coaches myself growing up, and I've been lucky to be involved with a lot of very qualified people over the years. But I think kind of one of the big things for me is like I try to feel like every athlete in front of me is going to be a different person. So I think a lot of it is trying to connect and coach each person how the best way for them to be coached, and being a little bit more diverse in my approach, where some people you need a bit softer touch, and some people you need to be a little bit more on them and more motivating because they need a bit of that drive, and it's just kind of approaching each person a little bit differently.
And
then kind of coming at it from that side of like, okay, well, what's the thing you respond to the best? A bit more than just, okay, it's always got to be this way and rigid and like my way or the highway. It's like, how can I get the most out of this athlete? How can I get the most out of this other person who really handles it differently? Like, I just remember the funniest when I was traveling with the 2004 born kids a lot. I had one boy who I was coaching who's super smooth, kind of chill, loves Federer, right? Like, so I'd be coaching him on the side, and I'm like trying to pump him up all the time and get a little more energy. And then one of the girls I was coaching, she's really intense and always like, and so I'd almost be like trying to calm her down. So it's like they're almost beside each other, and I have a completely different style of feedback, like court beside each other, which was always kind of something I look at as a bit funny, but maybe a thing that I try to really value too.
But I think it speaks about you as being just, in my mind, again, I don't mean to offend anybody who's not of that style, because this is very close to what I'm doing. Like I'm a big proponent of like you adapting, like because it's, again, it tells me you know how to adapt to different players, you know how to cater better to this player, and in the sense that I know how can this style will make you better faster if I do this. So you're not limiting yourself to like only like one approach that will work with just kind of like select players. So you will kind of go through no, this is it. So you're kind of like limiting how many players you can improve, and if doing it the other way, so to speak. But again, don't mean to like say anything about
of
like,
course.
because I know coaches who are like that, and
Mm-hmm.
they're really successful by adapting players to kind of go their way.
Yeah, one, and there's something to be said for that too. Like for myself, like probably if I was to pick something I struggle with, sometimes it's being a little bit more of the harder, like like more demanding, like the discipline, or giving a bit of the kick in the butt. Sometimes it's like I tend to take a bit more of the approach of okay, come on, like a bit more of the pull you aside, have the conversation.
That's right.
But that being said, sometimes you need the other one, and that's something I almost like have to force myself to bring out sometimes. Like I'll still obviously hold players to a high standard if they're not doing something, but sometimes that side is a little tougher for me to pull out. Whereas I know some coaches that they lean that way a little bit more, and with some athletes they respond to that better. And I mean, I think that's part of coaching and being an athlete is you have to find the right fit for you. And I mean, I try to be as dynamic as I can with the different approaches so that the most people fit. But at the end of the day, as a coach, you're not going to fit with everybody.
100%.
Or you will, but somebody's actually just a better fit. And I think, being able to realize that is a big thing too.
Yeah. Is there type of student that you're kind of like, okay, this is just not for, like, I can't, like, this is not for me. Like, I cannot adapt to this.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, I think that like that's part of the fun is trying to, if somebody doesn't totally match up, right, it's trying to maybe help them to, you can bring the things you're good at into their game, right? But I mean, one of the big things for me is it's just kind of about the values too. Like, the one thing that'll stop me with a player is if they're not a good person. Or have some traits where it seems like the situation and the environment they're not going to bring the values of sportsmanship, like some fair play, like this type of stuff. It's kind of something I just don't stand for. But that being said, I mean, that's also especially with younger kids, that can be an educational piece as well, right? Of hey, exactly. I saw this happen in the tournament. That's not what I stand for. And if we want to work together, well, that's the deal.
No, you're 100% right, and the values they play a big role when I select players as well, and when I choose if I want to continue working with that player. But that's something definitely I'm willing to just part our ways just based on values. That's 100%. And with young kids, I'll tell you a story. Just popped into my head as the second you said, like, when they're younger, it's our obligation to teach them and not to give up on them too early. I also believe. So we played this team competition, like U10 green ball. I had like a just turned 9-year-old kid. Like, so we were playing. It's very close match. It's I think set point for my player. To tie it to go to the tie break for the other, so deuce deciding point. And my player just calls it out when it's, again, I'm on the other side. I don't really know, but it looked like it was in.
Yeah.
So I'm like, the other guy goes like, what the hell? Like, what are you doing?
Of course.
And I'm like, listen, I don't know. Like, and I asked the captain, listen, if you saw like, I know, like, overrule, like, I'm okay. Like, but anyway, so we kind of like, the point is over. We're in a changeover. So I'm asking him, listen, I want you to be very honest with me. Okay, look at my eyes. Just be very honest. Was that ball in? He said, yes. I'm like, first of all, I respect that so much that you just that you were honest with me. You
owned up to it.
And exactly, you owned up to it. So that's just huge. Second of all, there is no chance we're doing it again, because I'm going to ask you another question. Do you really think you had to make that call to win against that guy? I said, no, I can do it in other ways, basically. So like, exactly. So we want to win. So it's kind of like, and ever since, like, he's been great.
Exactly.
So it's kind of like giving him, and he was so embarrassed like when I confronted him, and he's like, yeah, that's not right, you know. So, and that's kind of, to me, like what you're saying is educate, and make an emphasis, because you believe in values, you will pass those values.
And I had a similar one with a player I coached for a long time, like from U12 till all the way through U18. And I remember having a similar type of conversation when he was in U12 following a tournament, and he ended up winning a sportsmanship award at nationals one year.
Nice.
You know, so it's like, well, what if I just give up on that guy then, and you know, you never, maybe the path is a little bit different, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I don't want to talk about it because you brought up you working with somebody for a long time, and you're obviously in a place that is not known for tennis. Let's be honest here. You know, like obviously there's great centers and there's great, but when you're thinking about Edmonton, you don't think tennis. Oh, tennis. That's what they do, right? So like we think about bigger cities like Toronto, Montreal, and it's almost like easier to develop a player here. You might not be necessarily the best coach, but you can just happen to have a player that's good, and you're just because of simple numbers. Like there's numbers are so much bigger. So for me, the fact that you're able consistently develop really good players speaks a lot about you as a coach, because simply the numbers are not in your favor. So I want to talk about how are you doing it? What the hell, so but honestly, like if you can just break down like what is important for you when you start working with the player. Maybe let's start with that. It's a bigger conversation that is just I want to talk about everything, but because it's, to me, that's fascinating. Like we need to dig deep on this one.
I think first and foremost, though our city, it maybe isn't known as a tennis hub, like our center that I work at is phenomenal.
Oh, 100%.
So I mean, we're up to 14 indoor courts now.
Yeah, and I don't mean to bash on the center, on the facilities that you guys have. Of course, you have great facilities. Of course, you guys have great like courts and everything. But I'm just saying, number wise, it's tougher than in the bigger cities.
Number wise, and then also the thing that comes along with that is access to competition.
Exactly.
So one of our biggest hurdles is limited clubs that are in like junior high performance, junior development stream. So you're not hosting a ton of tournaments, and a lot of your tournaments, if you're based in Edmonton, are a 3-hour drive away. So that's one of the bigger hurdles. But luckily, as a club, we've got pretty good numbers in our high performance stream. So we have lots of internal competition. We've got a really good, part of my success, I think, is that all the other coaches around me are excellent. Because at the end of the day, the majority of hours that any athlete you're developing are spending on court is in a group setting.
Yeah.
So if it's not for the strength of the team overall and them being able to contribute as well, there's only so much you can do, I think.
Fair enough.
So the fact that we've got, I think our club now is the second most Coach 3 or higher in the country potentially now. Wow. I think it's Nuns Island has more, but I think we have. I'm trying to count quickly, but I think we're about 7 or 8 Coach 3s or higher now.
That's incredible.
At the club. So, that I think that's a big part of it is we do have a really good team. And then for me personally, I think, a lot of those players being successful is what they're willing to invest from their passion and time and like sacrifices they're making, their family, the kids. Because you're not necessarily in an environment where everything comes easy. Yeah. Court access is difficult. Like we have some of the fewest indoor courts per population in the country.
How do you manage that?
So it's a combination. I think a lot of the kids that end up getting the hours required, they're doing the program, plus they're coming out, say, early morning, weekends.
Yeah.
Private lessons, and again, but there's some barriers with that too, right? Like
Can you teach private lessons at any time, or there's like
our courts are so busy that all our private lessons are basically before our programs start, which is 2 p.m. Wow. So if you want to come for a private lesson, you're either coming for lunchtime or before school, basically, unless you're in a program where you have flexibility with your schedule, which was like one of the nice things when I was coaching Mia Kupras before she went.
And we'll talk about her a little bit more in detail for sure.
Yeah, but she was lucky enough to have flexibility with her schedules. You know, I could say do a 10 a.m. private lesson, 9 a.m. private lesson. So, but then she would also come out and train early morning too. Because our base program is right now about 10 hours a week of group. So, then if you're a player who really, wants to go really far, you basically have to double those hours or close to it, right? Yeah. So it's like, how do you find that time? And we've added in 6 to 8 a.m. a couple days a week with, players that are a bit more like that's offered more for our players that are wanting to play ITFs, wanting to travel more. So they have that option of adding on an extra 4 hours, which at least gets them up to 14 a week. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a challenge for sure.
Yeah, sorry, I interrupted your flow. Like, and you were saying like about, what's important for you. Yeah. So
I think that
back to that.
I think that it's a lot of it for me is just are you willing to, put the time in? Mm-hmm. It's like I think especially when it comes to those kids that I've been privileged enough to work with that have gone on and done really well. It's are they willing to use the time they have well? Are they willing to make the sacrifices to find the other time? Like one of the guys I coached who ended up going to Buffalo to play his college tennis. He actually, like, his parents were big on school. They wouldn't pull him out early. So he was only able to train in our 4 to 6 program, which I think at that time was only 6 hours a week. This is years ago. But then he does a private lesson, he plays a little bit extra, but he's probably only on court 12 hours a week at the time, and had finished as high as 5th at nationals. But he was a guy that, like, though with his reality was he's not going to be able to spend 20 hours a week on court. Yeah. But that time he did spend there was no wasted time. Yeah. Right. Never had to talk to him about being focused. Never had to talk about effort. He was just constantly on it. Yeah. And then as a result, like, okay, I only have these 12 hours, so I got to really use that time because I'm trying to keep up with people that are spending 20 hours, 25 hours. Like
that's right.
So it's like, that's a huge credit to him that he's able to do that. And I mean, made him so easy to work with.
So let's say a kid gets on the court with you, right? Like, what are the things that you're really like focusing on? Let's say you have like an 11, 12-year-old, okay? Like, and you're building for the future. You're focusing on developing the next Mia or the next, like just high level, like international level player. So what is it that you're paying attention to in the beginning?
So I think for me, it's going to come a bit from just developing with the younger players, which, to be honest, I don't have a ton of right now. I'm a bit more in the 13 to 18 right now, but I have a few young ones and have seen some of those ones that are 15 and 18 now from when they were younger. Okay. I think a lot of it's about giving them the foundation where, you can hit your forehand, you can hit your backhand, you can hit your serve, but you can also play a slice, you can play a volley. You're going to have, here's all the tools you're going to need in your toolbox, because then, going forward, they can start to develop their game style from there, right?
So making sure, I just want to clarify for everybody's listening, just to be perfectly clear. So we're talking about technical fundamentals, tactical just like
I'm gonna go a bit more in the technical with younger. Okay. For me, I mean, obviously still keeping it in a setting where, this is when you play this shot. This is when, okay, we've got our base forehand, but then, well, now how does that change if you're attacking? How does that change if the ball's below the height of the net? How does that change, right? So, I mean, you still have the tactical mindset in there too. But I think it's just giving that technical base so that then when they need to execute the skills later on, and the wins and losses become a bit more important as they get older, they have all those skills to play how they need to play. And then, the older you get, then you're probably leaning a bit more into more specific shots for the tactical things they need, more specific things for the game style. But I think younger, it's a lot about just developing that base.
Mm-hmm. And how do you do that? Do you do that in a group setting mostly, like privates?
So our structure is going to be a bit more where the privates are going to have a bit more of the technical. Mm-hmm. You can still touch on it within the groups because we're lucky enough to have a very good coach-student ratio in most of our programs. So if you need to break it down and do a little extra work, you can.
Okay.
But a lot of it will come from, okay, me as the private coach, I'll, we'll work on something. Then the player comes to the program and I kind of fill in the rest of the team. Okay, this is what they're working on. They're trying to be this position on their forehand. If you can keep an eye on that, great. And then there's, a lot of eyes on it and we can try to, get it mastered there. But a lot of the reps are coming in the group session, but a lot of the kind of coaching and teaching is coming more in the, I should say teaching more than coaching, but the teaching of the skill is coming more in the private lesson. Mm. And almost all of our performance stream players are matched up with a private coach.
Mm. So you break down, so every player is assigned to a coach.
I mean, not officially, but that's just
I see
how it's worked out. Like the club doesn't do it. The parents and coaches just work together to see kind of who's the fits and but almost all of our kids that are training 10 hours or more a week are in with a private coach as well for at least one private lesson a week.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So as they grow up and they let's say they have their foundation that you worked on so hard. So what else? What's next? What's the next level? Like they're 13, 14.
Yeah. Well, and I think then now you're getting into 13, 14. Now you're a bit more of who are they as a player, mm-hmm. And then kind of taking those things they do really well, whether it be a technical skill, maybe they've got a massive forehand. Or is it something about how they compete? Are they, an unbelievable competitor? Are they really physically fit? So it's what's the thing that kind of sets them apart and then leaning into that a little bit. But, being able to, now we're trying to go a bit more, okay, how are you going to go out and use these skills that you've developed younger? How are you going to use these skills now to be the most effective player? Yeah. And I mean, at 13, 14, you probably still have a bit of a blend. You're probably still developing some of the skills and you're working some technical stuff, right? Whereas that 16, 17 range, it's a little bit less. But and you're now starting to get into a bit more of working towards what that final product's going to be rather than just developing the more general base.
Mm-hmm. What's your thoughts on, because along the process, obviously as a parent, I'm, and it's hard to have that mindset of long term, right? It's mm-hmm. I find as a parent they want, and some do as you work with them they understand it, of course, but it's hard for them to grasp. Okay, I'm putting X amount of effort, X amount of money, X amount of resources into my child. I want my child to win. Right, at some point, sure, it's a foundation and all that's great, but I want my child to make nationals. I want my child to win nationals. I want my child. So what is your take on winning, and how do you manage that? How do you manage the parent? How do you manage the kid if they're not, or if they're winning too much, which is also sometimes can be an issue.
Yeah. So I think so much of it is just about building trust through communication, mm-hmm. right? Is, I remember, back when I was coaching Mia, when I first started with her, it was, at first it was kind of, it felt a bit okay, I'm doing my stuff, her dad would go on court with her, which was part of how she got so many hours. And, we would each kind of do our stuff. And then we started talking more. And then it became, over time, more and more unified in the approach. And then, it kind of became more of a balance. And then eventually it would be, a bit more of just what I would say. And it was just going to be over the years of, okay, we're building that trust. And it went from him not necessarily knowing me that well into, okay, yeah, I know you have it. Like, oh, do you mind, maybe she struggled with this in a match. Do you mind looking at that? Yeah, no problem, right? It's, so I think a lot of it's in the communication, but also, when you think of winning and the parents are like, they want their kid to have success, right? Yeah. It's like, as a parent, you just always want your child to be successful. And it, for me, success isn't always, as a developing athlete, success isn't always going to be in a win and loss. So I think it's being clear with the parents as well that part of the process here is you can have wins that aren't scoreboard wins. So,
like, can you share some of those? Like, what could it be, for example?
I mean, I'll use me as an example again. So she made a big technical change on the technique on her forehand when she was last year under 14. So our provincials in Alberta run basically right at the end of February, beginning of March. She made this change. We'd had a visit to one of the national training centers, and ODAD in Vancouver had recommended this change. So Mia and I talked about it and I said, okay, first, do you think this is a good change? Do you think this will help you? Right? So she says, yes. Okay, so we agree, okay, we're going to make this change. And I said, okay, well, here's the options. You have provincials in 2 weeks. You have nationals in 6 weeks. So we can change it now. We can change it after provincials. We can change it after nationals. What do you want to do?
And how old was she when you were asking her that question? Because that's a deep question, like to ask a player. Like it requires a lot of maturity and a lot of understanding and feel for your own game.
Yeah. So she was last year 14s. Mm-hmm. So indoor season last year 14s. So she would have, I guess if she has an early birthday, so she would have been 14 already, but just 14.
Okay.
And because I think if we're going to make any kind of change like that, it almost has to come from her, because she has to be bought into it and say, this is a change I'm making because I think it's going to help me, not just because the coach says to do it. Right. And then as a result, so she comes through, we start working on it. We spent a ton of time, like we're doing, baskets daily on it. And I mean, that was part of, an advantage that she was able to have, is we were able to have a lot of time over that stretch. But she went into the first provincials and had a really bad loss, like 1-1 to a player that she's usually very close with, but would beat historically, and lost to another player that trains at our club for the first time ever.
So disaster results.
So I think won 1 match, lost 2, which by her standards was not normal. But
performance-wise, disaster.
She hit her forehand the right way that we'd been working on the entire tournament. Didn't bail on it, didn't go back to the old technique, didn't do anything like that. And, so looking at it from a development standpoint, well, that's an incredible thing for a 13, 14-year-old to be able to go do, who's a very competitive person. Yeah. So, like, what a win that is from that development of that skill.
100%.
Results-wise, not a great tournament.
Did you communicate to a parent that, like, for example, hey, like, this is, we're going into this tournament. Let's be easy on her in terms of, like, expectations, or did you say that, or like, hey, our priorities for her to maintain technique, this is like, or no?
The nice thing with her parents is they've never been too tied up in wins and losses. Her dad was quite involved in her tennis, still is when she's back home, but he was always about kind of playing the right way and hitting the ball the right way, more so than did you win, did you lose. Like, I remember her losing a match where I remember watching the match. She must have made 50 unforced errors, but man, did she hit her forehand clean, even though it was going out.
Yeah.
She came off. He gave her a big hug. Said, "Amazing. Your forehand was so great." Like, inside she's probably fuming because she just made 50 unforced errors, right? But so that made that type of situation a bit easier. But then going forward, now she spends another week working on it.
Mm-hmm.
By the next provincials, because that was the 16s, by the 18s, 14s, 18s, she has a phenomenal weekend. I think won the 14s, lost in like semifinals of 18s. Like, and then fast forward another month, more work, more time. She won U14 nationals without dropping a set.
Wow.
But had we not made that change, had she not made that commitment to it, you probably don't end up with that same result. So, but I think so much of it was the buy-in that she was able to give. And I mean, so much credit to her because, if the player doesn't fully commit to, I mean, part of why it's probably a special kid. But
100%. No, but I think Bob Brett was saying that, 80% of success as a coach is a buy-in from your player. Like if your player agrees to what you're gonna do together for the next period of time or whatever, it's crucial. Like it's just
and I had a couple athletes that I've worked with in the past. Like one when I was a younger coach, he was 5 years behind me, so I was only about 20, and he was 15. Top provincial player, top 20, top 16 at nationals. And I ended up working with him, and I mean, we're doing a lot of hitting at that time, but also he was a bit stubborn. And I can say that now because he's one of my best friends now, but one of the most stubborn athletes I've ever worked with. But so when I'd work with him, it was a lot of, you'd have to sell him. You'd have to, spend the time. Okay, this is why we need to make this change. This is because once you get him on board, he'd just go crazy on it.
Yeah.
But you'd have to really sell him. And I mean, between him and then I used to work with a wheelchair athlete who was internationally ranked in wheelchair. And that was really interesting because I would have my tennis knowledge, but I wouldn't know exactly how it would work with what he could do using the chair.
Yeah.
So that would be a lot of selling as well, because it was I'd have to say to him, okay, here's what I think it should be.
Yeah. What do you think?
Does this actually work?
Yeah. Does that make sense?
And it's having some of those relationships as a younger coach, I think really helped me now to be able to go in and talk to a player and be able to say, hey, here's why I think this is important. Here's the reason, are you on board? Here's why it'll help you. But, that's something I try to develop with the players I work with long-term is, okay, I've got your back. I have your best interest in mind. And if they feel that, then when I say, hey, I think this is a change we need to make, then they're more likely to be on board because they know that I'm not going to intentionally steer them astray.
Yeah, no, 100%. Listen, as a player, as a person, if somebody comes to you and says, listen, Carson, you have to wear your cap the other way. You cannot wear it backwards. And you're like, what? Why? So it's for them, they know it's going to be a process. They've done changes of technique. They've done all these things that they know it's going to require a certain amount of effort from them, so they just want to make sure why am I supposed to do that? I think it's perfectly reasonable question from a player. And if they're, because typically players, there's different players, but in their majority, they want to get better, they want to improve, they want to win, they want to win, and you have to sometimes sell them, sometimes and that's perfectly that's perfectly fine. You have to have that skill as a coach.
Well, and I think with the younger athletes too, both for them and the parents, part of the sell is, well, do you want to win when you're 11, or do you want to win when you're 16, 17,
no,
18,
exactly.
Right? And I mean, as a player, I was always the guy who wanted the why. As a player, was very tactically driven. I always wanted to kind of know, like, okay, well, why am I doing this? Why is this going to help me? So I was always big on the sell as a player and tended to connect a little bit more with coaches who could give me that rather than the kind of, I say it, you do it approach.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
And I mean, I find too, the athletes now, like, just, it's a different generation of athletes.
100%.
And I mean, back, if you rewind even, I feel like I was a little bit in between, where we were starting to be a little bit more of, we wanted to know the why. But if you went one generation before me, it was a lot more of just, well, you go to the lesson, the coach says to do it, so you do it because they're the coach. And it feels like it's moved further and further away from that, at least in Canada.
Oh, 100%.
Right?
I think, I think like in Europe, again, certain parents in Canada, they still maintain that style like you. And I think there has to be some of that still present.
100%.
Because it maintains like listen to your coach. Like, of course, you don't have to do everything your coach tells you, but you have to listen to the coach and have the communication, have the respect for the coach. Because if you just keep questioning because you keep questioning things, like, that's like, I don't think it's polite. I don't think it's, but if you're genuinely curious, and if you're genuinely like inquiring, like, why am I, if it's a healthy conversation, and it doesn't look like it's just like some spoiled brat, just like trying to kind of get away from doing certain things, then you know what I mean? Like, so no, 100%. I feel the same way. Like, a lot of kids just completely changed, and we have to adapt. And I've been adapting. You've been adapting for pretty much the whole coaching career. I want to talk a little bit about Mia, though, because we mentioned her name just for everybody's watching. Mia Kupres. She's 2004. She's
2004.
She's an 04 female athlete. She's won nationals U14, U18. I believe she played on the national team. She's a fantastic athlete, fantastic player. She has some WTA points. Played NBO as well, National Bank Open.
Yeah.
So like incredible international level female athlete. And you worked with her since she was since the beginning. You were her only coach, right? Like in the
well, I got her at about 8 years old.
Okay, so very young. This is very young.
But one of the other coaches who works with us at Saville now, his name's Emil. He actually started with her at like community courts as her very first coach when she was younger. He actually didn't even work with us yet. He was working for just another company in the city that would do some recreational stuff at other courts. And then he managed. He was the one who basically found her. And I mean, I think so much of her being in tennis is that he brings a ton of joy and passion to all his coaching.
This is incredible, like, to hear, like, just the fact that I keep interrupting you, but like, it's just mind blowing to hear that talent can be spotted everywhere, right? Like, it's just community courts, just like, it's not like they came and they say like, hey, like, we want to be pro, like, let's go. No, it's just kind of like that's how it happens. That's the magic of our sport. It's just, you have to look for everywhere. Wow. I mean, sorry, I'll let you continue. I'm just like admiring stories like that, because it just shows you like it can be anywhere, right?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's always funny too, like, just to touch on that quickly too. It's like one of the other the boys I've coached recently, who's, again, he's a 2004 as well. His name's Josh O'Bonye. But we always talk about the early talent ID and this stuff, and you see that so much in coaching. And he ended up being our number one 2004 coming out of the province. He was top 8, top 6 at nationals, and he didn't pick up a tennis racket till he was 10.
Wow.
But unbelievable athlete, really driven to improve. Would be doing after program. I'd walk out. He's waiting for his parents to pick him up. He's in the lobby doing shadow strokes. So if you get a good athlete who's motivated, who's this, doesn't matter where they come from, right? It's like, I mean, we talk about like, look how great this kid is in orange ball. This guy hadn't picked up a racket yet. It's amazing how sometimes you can have a different pathway, right? It doesn't always have to be the same.
Yeah, and it's, if you think about like we have in Ontario our provincial regroupings, where like we like to qualify for that, there's trials, right, to make those regroupings, and there's like different age categories. Like I think you don't quote me on that, but like U9, U10, type of, maybe U12. I'm not sure, but mostly younger kids, like maybe even U8, and like he wouldn't even make that because he would he doesn't know how to play tennis at that point.
Yeah, he hadn't even picked up a racket yet, right?
Yeah, so by those standards, he's like sorry, like no chance, right? But then that doesn't stop him to becoming like one of the top players in the country. So still making a good like career out of it, like going to college, I'm assuming, and
Yeah, so awesome. And then with Mia, so she had started with Emil. He was her first coach, and then she came over to Saville, got into the programs, and I believe when she was, I think it was about 8 that I started working with her, because we got some funding from Tennis Canada to support a few of our players that were doing really well. And so they basically said, okay, well, we're going to use this funding so she can get some private lessons, which was when she got paired up with me. Basically the club said, okay, well, we can set you up with Carson, this many lessons, and then the rest is history a little bit. But, then we kept going from there throughout the years. And
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. Go for it.
So looking back, she's a very successful player right now. And like, obviously throughout her junior career, like she was at the top most of the time. Like once she got there, she was always be like one of the top players and contenders to win any tournament she participated. So what made her, in your eyes, so successful? And maybe you can talk about a few things, like looking back at your training specifically. Like obviously it's some of it's her qualities, right, like as a player, but maybe you can touch on that. But also, like, if you can speak about as a coach, what do you think made an impact on her to make her so successful?
So I think a lot of what made her successful just overall was, so much is just she just wanted it.
Yeah.
It's like it's so much easier to teach someone how to play tennis than teach someone to really, really care, right? It's like if they have that passion and that drive and that undeniable urge to be great, it's pretty easy from our standpoint. And that also came from, she had a good support structure with her dad would go and spend the extra time on court with her, right? There's 6 a.m. like they're coming out to train extra, to do he's on the ball machine with her. So there's a lot of the stuff the family did, as well as her drive to be successful. And then I think part of the success for her was she, physically has a very is strong, has a very live arm. So she's able to generate a lot of racket speed that you don't typically see from female players.
The crap out of the ball.
Yes.
I got a chance to travel with her a few times. Like she's like on fire. Like every time she plays. It's like,
the racket speed she can generate on the forehand is pretty incredible. And I think part of that is, I remember seeing some of the physical testing when she was younger, and some of that is from that. Like she's just the physical, some of it she's maybe born with, some of it they worked on physically. But also, part of it I think comes too from her ability to strike the ball is, well, what was prioritized from her team? And I say team because, like I say, her dad was involved as well. And, there would be drills. Like I remember seeing her some days, she's out there and just cracking forehands on the ball machine with him, and the ball might be hitting the tarp on the other side. It was just generating that racket speed, developing that skill, to the point sometimes I would even have to go and like, okay, you've been doing this. Now okay, come over here. Now we'll just clean it up a little bit and, make it work in the point. Right. But a lot of it was just that really constant eye on developing your game. and making sure your game is better, making sure your skills are good. And because, I mean, she had the competitiveness and the want just oozing, right? So it's like you wouldn't have to tell her, okay, you've got a match, like you better go out and compete hard.
Oh no, she's just like, no, she's
almost
she's
too
like
hard sometimes.
no, she's eyes on the prize. Like she's always like competitive mode. Like, and it goes like for anything off court that has to do with like competing in one way or the other. It's game on for her. And I wanted to ask you about her mindset like that. How's her parents like? Are they like super competitive? Were they tough on her? Like, or is that something you find came from them, or it's just like kind of like?
Yeah, I find that I would say it's interesting because I think the perception that people would have from the outside looking in is that, you know, her parents were tough, like her dad in particular. But if you actually heard the conversations, it's a lot about, like what I mentioned earlier, it's not about winning and losing. It's about values. It's about, you know, being respectful to the coaches. It's about giving your best effort. It's about, you know, working on the things you're supposed to be working on. You know, like it's about that stuff, not about I can't believe you didn't win that one. You know, it's just about, so there was a discipline demanded, but not really in a negative way from what I can see. But, you know, if you were on the outside looking in, sometimes you might think, you know, oh, wow, yeah, like your dad, oh man, he looks like pretty intimidating. But if you have a conversation with him, it's just a very, very nice human being.
Yeah. I think this is a big message for all the parents to hear of some of the younger players that I know for sure are listening to this show and to this podcast. If you guys are listening on some audio platforms out there, and like for sure, this is huge, and it comes up over and over again that like, hey guys, just focus on values, focus on effort, focus on, you know, development, focus on just being a good human being, and respect, on honesty, and things like this, humility, and the winning, like that's already winning. First of all, like since when 100%. Doing all of those things became like just like, you know, this is already a huge win. Like honestly, if I have a kid, well, when I have a kid, and if my kid does that, dude, like come on, like
well,
no,
and I
it's
mean,
it's
when you
it's
have
jackpot.
those values, and I mean, work ethic, respect, you know, all of this stuff, when you have that, you're going to be successful later in your life, 100%. Whether it's in tennis or your career. It's like that. I mean, and athletes, you know, a lot of athletes end up having those traits that they learn through being in competitive sport, which is why a lot of companies want to hire former athletes.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, because they know this person knows how to work at something, how to become good at it.
That's right.
You know, and yeah, so much of, I think, and so much of us as coaches is when you get an athlete who has all of that stuff, it's so easy to want to work with them. And it's like, oh, you know, they want me to come and watch this match, you know, that's outside of my normal coaching. Yeah, I can do that because, you know, the kid is a good kid. The parents treat you well. Like, I mean, I remember just out of the blue, like Mia had played a tournament on the weekend, and I remember on the Monday, all of a sudden her parents had sent an email to the manager of our club, just unprompted, just saying, you know, we really appreciate the work Carson's doing, you know, and just paying me some compliments to the manager. But I didn't ask them to do that. There was nothing that I felt I did that was extra. They just, you know, showed that appreciation. And then over the years, it makes it so much easier to say, you know, these people value what I'm bringing. So, like, I really want to work with them because they clearly appreciate what I'm doing, right? And I think that's so much of building the strong relationship, because if you have that triangle of the player, coach, and parent, they all have to be on the same page.
Yeah.
Really, like if you have any piece of that are pulling a different way, it's probably not going to work as well as you want.
Mm-hmm. Do you still stay in touch with her and her parents?
Yeah. Nice. Anytime she's home, we still are on court together.
Wow.
So
that's incredible. And she's what, turning 20 now?
Just turned 20.
Just turned 20.
So exactly. in her second year at Texas A&M now.
So it's like, it just shows you, like you started working with when she was 8, 12 years later.
Yeah.
Their relationship is still like strong, and she wants to come back, and she wants to, like have that. It's like, like when you're away from your home and then you finally come home, like you want to have like, like you want to sleep in your bed, you want to like taste like your parents' food, and you want to go like and like have some good time with your coach. But now but now it's more, I'm assuming, I'm just like making things up, but I'm just thinking about it. It's kind of like it's more like to work, but it's more like you guys are even now, like in terms of hey, like let's let's hang out, let's hit, like what do you think about that forehand, what do you think about my game, and or maybe let's just play.
Well, and I find like that's one of the things that shifts as the kids get older, right? Like I was doing some lessons recently with a 11-year-old girl at our club, like she's second year U12, and we're kind of feeling each other out a bit, and I'm saying to her like, hey, you have some say here in what we work on. It's not just like I'm going to tell you everything. I said, you're younger though, so I'm going to tell you most of the stuff. But as you get older, you have more and more say, right? So like you say, when I work with Mia now, like, some of it's okay. Still her dad says, can you work on this high forehand? Or some of it's I say, okay, I watched some of your matches streamed when you were at college. I think we should work on this. And some of it is she says, I'm not feeling this shot, or the coaches at school said I should spend more time on this, or I was at the Tennis Canada, regrouping basically for like a week, and they, we were working on this and I found it helped, right? So it's like, it's a lot more from her than it was when she was 10, right? When she was 10, it was very little from her. Now it's, like you say, a lot more, like even maybe even more driven from her.
Yeah, no, 100%. No, that's why I love coaching, especially like on the performance side, like you said in the beginning, because like you could create a true lasting relationship with the person that you coach. And because again, like you care about them, they care about their game, but then they feel how you care about them. It's like, you make such a big impact on your player, and that's so gratifying, and that's why we all do it.
Exactly.
I think.
Yeah, the high performance coaching life isn't the easiest life as a tennis coach, right? But it's when you get those payoffs of seeing where they end up and seeing the progress along the way and stuff. And it's there's a feeling that you can't really match a lot of other ways.
Yeah, 100%. Carson, on that note, I want to thank you for joining and talking to me about all these things that we discussed. And I wish you to continue making a big impact on your future players and creating many more champions. I appreciate your time. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
All right. Cheers.